So Takfirism is the ideology of excommunication. If I practice takfir, I claim that even fellow Sunni Muslims are apostates, and that's essentially a death sentence. If I call you an apostate, it means you're marked for death, and I should kill you. ISIS is a takfiri organization, in the sense that if you are deemed insufficiently pious as a Sunni, you'll be exterminated. Now that's the sort of marketing and how they present themselves. But again, there are exceptions. They don't necessarily go around and make sure that all Sunnis share the exact same religious construct as they. Although it is true, they will patrol the streets. They have a security unit called the Hizbah, which is essentially like the Saudi morality police. And if you're not in mosque on Friday, you'll be punished and thrown into jail. But Takfirism is a controversial conceit even within the annals of Salafi jihadism. And in fact, Osama bin Laden was always at odds with Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, the founder of ISIS, when it was known as Al-Qaeda in Iraq, over this issue. Because Zarqawi was a genocidal maniac, pathological. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I don't think anyone would really try to make it controversial that he was a true believer in all of this stuff. This is the guy who patented the dressing of Western or non-Western hostages in the orange Guantanamo or Abu Ghraib style jumpsuits, and then the beheading on video as he's reading these imprecations against the West and drawing moral equivalence between what the Crusader infidel Zionist conspiracy was doing in Iraq and now what he is doing in retaliation. But what I find fascinating is, bin Laden, one of the issues he had with Al-Qaeda, with his own franchise, essentially, was when they were going around blowing up Shia mosques and Husseiniyyahs. Zarqawi's goal was very Machiavellian. Sunnis are a minority in Iraq. They're the majority of Muslims worldwide, but in Iraq they're the minority. And the only way you're going to get Sunnis to reclaim the throne, so to speak, in Baghdad, is if Sunnis from around the world pour into Iraq and turn it into this cynosure of all-out, total sectarian war, and essentially exterminate the Shia. So his project was genocidal: kill all the Shia, and in doing so, you will prompt or foment their radicalization, as you say. I mean, drive them into these sort of paroxysms of religious fervor. They'll be run or overseen by Iran, which is the mothership of Shia Islam in the region, much the way that Saudi Arabia is for Sunni Islam. And these guys will go around and do what we saw them do for almost a decade in Iraq: form death squads, the Badr Corps, a group called the League of the Righteous, the Hezbollah brigades, not to be confused with Lebanese Hezbollah. They were going around attacking American soldiers, but also attacking Sunni civilians, rounding them up and saying, what's your name? It's Omar, so you must be a Sunni. Show me your ID card. Right, okay, so we're going to take you under the cover, by the way, of being an Iraqi state institution. So, if you were sick, the guy who drove the ambulance and who purported to take you to hospital would actually be a Shia militiaman in disguise, take you to some dungeon and torture you and probably kill you. So Zarqawi wanted this to happen. He wanted the Shia to become, religiously extremist and radicalized, so that they would then attack the Sunnis, and the Sunnis would be driven further into the fold of Al-Qaeda. And then precipitate, of course, this, what I call the international or global casting call for mujahideen. So Iraq would become, in a sense, another Soviet-Afghan war. People from around the world, from the Gulf, from Indonesia, from Turkey, would pour in and join the ranks of Al-Qaeda, and eventually Al-Qaeda would subsume everyone and everything else, including other rival Sunni organizations. So remember, the insurgency in Iraq, you had groups that were Islamist. You also had groups that were nationalists, that just wanted the restoration of the Ba'ath Party or wanted Sunnis to be back on top. So it was very complicated. But look, we now know, and we've seen, ISIS became top dog because it had the most brutal methods. It became the wealthiest organization. I mean, people forget. There's a lot of nonsense in the ether about who's funding ISIS. Well, ISIS is funding ISIS. By 2006, because they were controlling so much of the oil and illicit arms and contraband smuggling networks in Iraq, they had actually become wealthier than Al-Qaeda, to the point where bin Laden and Ayman al-Zawahiri had asked them for a loan. Mm-hmm. So the subsidiary was meant to be financing the patron. And this is how they get on. And again, the complicating factors here. ISIS, we have seen, takes anvils and jackhammers to priceless artifacts and archaeological wonders, World Heritage Sites as defined by UNESCO. They also, though, what they don't smash up, they steal and they sell on the black market. Now, they justify this. And again, it could be they absolutely believe in this sort of codification system for artifacts, or it could be, well, look, what's too large to smuggle out of the country has to be destroyed, and what's small enough to smuggle rather, we can then sell and remunerate ourselves. But they justified it as follows: if it's idolatrous art, paganist, pre-Islamic gods being worshipped, such as the Temple of Baal, that all has to go. If it's Babylonian or Sumerian coins, little trinkets that we dig out of the sand, well, we can sell that. They have a whole department. Actually, Abu Saif, the guy that was killed in the U.S. Special Forces raid in eastern Syria last spring, he was in charge of the antiquities smuggling for ISIS. And they do this it's almost like a Talmudic enterprise of defining what can stay, what can go, and how you have to handle it, and how you have to ask permission for stealing, the cultural patrimony of Syria and Iraq. It's very sophisticated. Their pretensions of statehood are not really to be underestimated. We like to pretend like, no, they're just a guerrilla insurgency. They really think, and again, whether it's motivated by religion purely or religion plus a sense of political restoration or Sunni revanchism, they believe that they are building a state apparatus, and the caliphate is a legitimate international project. There's no self-deception about that.